All right, which means that we are almost ready to go. I'll give all the technical people just another 30 seconds to finalize. All right, I think we are almost ready. I see somebody still moving around. PBCJ ready? TVM, TVJ, JIS, Gleaner, The Observer, and streaming ready. Okay. All right, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for being here with us at the regular post-cabinet media briefing. This morning, we are pleased to have the Minister of Education, Youth and Information, the Honorable Senator Roel Reid. And Senator Reid will be joined by the Minister without Portfolio here in the Office of the Prime Minister, the Honorable Darrell Vaz. Minister Reid will give us an update on several matters taking place at Cabinet over the last 2 weeks, and of course some education matters as well. And he'll be followed by Minister Vaz, who will give us an update on some infrastructure matters. May we first, though, apologize for the delayed start. I know many of you have been asking for us to just hold on for a while you get here. So again, for those who may be viewing, or apologies for the delay. And so let me turn over now to Minister Reid, who will update you, and that will be followed then by Minister Vaz. Minister Reid.
Thank you very much, Press Secretary, and good morning to everybody. Good morning to my colleagues from the media and from the Ministry of Education, Youth and Information. Good morning to the Director of Communications at OPM, Mr. Robert Morgan. Good to see you, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, by way of recent Cabinet happenings since our last briefing, Cabinet received and approved the following annual reports and or financial statements for tabling in Parliament. The Planning Institute of Jamaica, December 2016 to December 2017 report, National Irrigation Commission Limited for the period ending March 15 to 2016, Electoral Commission of Jamaica, period ending 2016-2017, General Legal Counsel, April 1, 2017 to March 31, 2018, the Betting, Gaming and Lotteries Commission, BGLC, for the year ending March 31, 2017, Jamaica Deposit Insurance Corporation, year ended March 31, 2017, Sports Development Foundation report for the period ending 2016, Caymanas Track Limited, CTL, the year ended March 31, 2017, the Early Child Commission annual report for the period 2016-2017. Cabinet gave approval for an increase in this year's budget of $278.613 million in grant resources to facilitate implementation of the following 4 projects pending regularization of the expenditure in the first supplementary estimates. These include the technical support to a project with the IDB to reduce teenage pregnancy, support to the National Water Commission for improvement in the corporization institutional strengthening under a project with the IDB, feasibility study of the South St. Catharines South Clarendon Irrigation Project with the Caribbean Development Bank, United Kingdom Caribbean Infrastructure Partnership Fund, and the feasibility study of the Pedro Plains Irrigation Project with the CDB and the Government of France. Cabinet also gave approval for a new initiative under the Program for Advancement Through Health and Education, PATH. PATH, as you know, is an income support program providing benefits to the poorest and most vulnerable in our society, and is a primary component of the government of Jamaica's social protection strategy, aimed at addressing intergenerational cycle of poverty. On average, the family benefit consists of a cash grant of $4,905 paid monthly, or $9,810 every 2 months. In recognizing that back-to-school support was part of the overall social protection provided to poor families internationally, and to ensure that associated increases in cost did not further compromise the financial ability of the household, Cabinet approved the following additional benefits: inclusion of a back-to-school allowance as a benefit on the PATH, and that each student in primary through the secondary levels to be provided with a back-to-school allowance of $3,500. And this is expected to be paid this month. The Cabinet also gave approval for the sale of properties owned by the National Insurance Fund, referred to as the Landovery Estate and the Flat Point, located in Salem, St. Anne, the sum of $929 million to Gore Developments Limited. Cabinet also gave approval for Jamaica to be hosting the first World Route Development Forum in the Caribbean in 2020. This is further to a recent visit to the 24th World Route Development Forum in Guangzhou, China, and the Tourism Expo in Tokyo, Japan. Jamaica will host also a Caribbean regional seminar on transportation of nuclear waste and related issues at the University of the West Indies Mona campus on August 17th this year. Cabinet also gave consideration and approval for former Cabinet Minister and Member of Parliament, the Honorable Easton Douglas, to be accorded an official funeral. Cabinet took note of the following facts in coming to this decision: that former Minister Douglas, being a Member of Parliament for South East St. Andrew from the period 1989 to 2002, when he retired, that his service in public life included as Minister of Health and the Public Service, Minister of Housing, Land and Environment, Permanent Secretary in the Ministries of National Security, Defense and Construction, and as a government town planner. By way of contracts approved, I first of all report on the contract for Phase 2 Enterprise Content Management, ECM. A contract was awarded to Fujitsu Caribbean Jamaica Limited in the sum of $1,193,756.19 for the provision of goods and services in connection with Phase 2 of the ECM project. Rehabilitation of sewage treatment plant, C&D Construction and Engineering Limited, was approved for the award of a contract in the sum of $62,845,112.50 to undertake the rehabilitation of the sewage treatment plant at the Monimus housing development. Variation to contract in Masmere housing development, Westmoreland. Cabinet approved a variation of contract in the sum of $24,657,246.55, including GCT, originally awarded to Build Right Construction. The original contract was in the sum of $129,854,159.04 to undertake civil infrastructure works inclusive of sewage conveyance system and a centralized sewage treatment to facilitate the subdivision comprising of 106 service lots. This variation is a 19.8% increase over the original contract. The project Transmission Mains Upgrading Program, potable water conveyance within Kingston and St. Andrew and along the Northern Coastal Highway. Coal Engineering Group was awarded a contract in the sum of $938,552.59 US, inclusive of taxes and contingencies, for provision of consulting services in respect of this project. The building and renovation work on the premises of the Broadcasting Commission of Jamaica. Miller's Electrical Company has been approved for the award of a contract in the sum of $73,325,968 for this renovation project. Infrastructure works at West Albion in St. Thomas. Cabinet approved the award of contract in the sum of $127,577,689.22 to Chins Construction Limited to undertake infrastructure works in relation to 241 lots which had been subdivided since 2012 at the West Albion in Yala St. Thomas under a housing relocation project. Proposed variation for the refurbishment and renovation of the Sir Donald Sangster Building, 116 East Street. Cabinet approved the variation in the award of a contract to HDB Construction Limited, having considered the corrected figures presented by the National Contracts Commission, further to their recognition of incorrect figures used to represent and the revised contract sum. The final figure noted for the contract award is now confirmed as $262,778,984.39. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister Reid, for that comprehensive update on all the happenings in Cabinet and matters brought before Cabinet during the last two-week period. There are several, I'm sure, questions that will flow from some of those issues you raised. May I now, though, ask Minister without Portfolio in the Office of the Prime Minister, the Honorable Darrell Vaz, to give his update on infrastructure projects, and then we'll take questions from members of the media. Minister Vaz.
Thank you very much. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Yesterday, I was part of the OPM Live program and gave an update on a number of infrastructure projects that were to happen. And also in doing that, I was asked for commentary on the situation with the current infrastructure projects specific to roads. And I want to repeat just some of those before I move into the infrastructure projects, because I think it's important, and I want to do so very candidly. First of all, I'm not quite sure that the people of Jamaica understand why it is that we have to be undertaking all of these road projects all at once. I think that the perception is there that we did it by choice and design. But let me make it very clear that the government of Jamaica, when coming to office in 2016, was forced with a situation of use it or lose it. And when I say use it or lose it, I speak specifically to funds, loan funds, that were negotiated by the government of Jamaica, which specifically was the Major Infrastructure Development Program, funded by China Exim Bank, to be carried out by China Harbour Engineering Company. You'll recall that we had JDIP, Jamaica Infrastructure and Development Program, back in 2008 when we were in office. The JP government was in office at that time. That was subsequently changed to Major Infrastructural Program in 2016 after he lost the election. And that loan was for 350 million United States dollars. And that loan had timelines. It had performance clauses. And what we found is that a number of the projects were not as advanced as they should have been. especially the major projects that were to be carried out by China Harbour Engineering Company. I speak specifically to Mandela Highway, Constant Spring Road, Hagley Park Road, and of course, the 3 Mile bypass. So we have a timeline in which to complete it. If not, the loan will be withdrawn, and what we'll have is unfinished infrastructure which we cannot afford. So let me just make it categorically clear that we have been forced to do what we are doing, and what we want to do is do it in as seamlessly a manner as we can. We also have other infrastructure loans that are to come on, which I will speak about. But just let me say, first of all, that as it relates to what has been transpired, specifically since back to school, there have been major challenges. Major challenges which I'm aware of because I drive myself most of the time. So I'm fully aware of it. And I think that as a government, there has to be better communication. There has to be better signage. There has to be better alternative routes. And of course, we have to make sure that we maintain the security on those routes. We are fully aware that there still are shortcomings, but I can assure you that we are working tirelessly to alleviate the problems. But let me just say very clearly to the media and of course to the viewers that it is imperative that we work together on this. And while it is always good to criticize, what is required is a partnership, because the media will play a critical role in getting out information. And based on discussions from Monday at Cabinet to today with the Prime Minister, who, as you know, is the de facto Minister of Economic Growth and Job Creation, where the National Works Agency falls under, we are moving to have some additional measures. I think communication to the traveling public is key. It is the most important. And I think that what has been suggested is a multi-agency situation room, which will comprise of the NWA, Jamaica Constabulary Force, the contractor, the GIS, and several others, including the media, that can have access to give real-time information. So in the mornings, you can be advised as to the best routes and the worst routes. And also that people can call in and give on-the-ground responses as to what's happening. I think, ladies and gentlemen, that we are going to have to implore other measures. Suggestions that I have made is maybe to use the Jamaica Defense Force to give us a recce in the mornings and in the afternoons. Whether we use drones, whatever it is, we need to make sure that we have real-time information so that we can alleviate the problem. I'll give you a simple example. I was driving myself down this morning, and when I got to Graham Heights, it was full to the top. I decided to turn around and use Shortwood Road, Grandspen, and Drumblair, and I was at my office in 15 minutes, whereas it would have probably taken me an hour and a half. But who knew that? Or who knows that? So giving you an example, just like how some radio stations have in the mornings traffic reports, I think we're going to have to implement that. But aside and apart from that, we have to make some fundamental decisions. Do we stagger school hours? Do we stagger business hours? All of those need to be taken into consideration. Carpooling, special arrangements with the JUTC for specific areas that are congested so that workers can access rather than all having to drive. So I say that to say, ladies and gentlemen, that the government of Jamaica is fully aware. It is a vexing issue, but the benefits will far outweigh the negatives. It's not only about the improvement of roads, and of course, transportation and time is critical to any growing economy. But most importantly, what you will be able to get in terms of improved sewage, improve water supplies, improve telecommunication. So there's a whole lot of benefits to road infrastructure improvement. So I ask for your patience, I ask for your sensitivity, and to reiterate that this was not a policy decision, it was not by choice. We have got to do this, and it will benefit the country better in the long run, because the sooner the better infrastructure is, the better we are in terms of our growth agenda. So while I say that, let me just briefly update you on 3 major projects that have been long in coming. I will start by indicating that South Coast Highway Improvement Project, as it relates to the local segment, you'll recall that that was a $384 million loan that was negotiated with the China Exim Bank, which would do the highway from Harborview to Yallas, and then they do the improvements to Cedar Valley and on to Port Antonio. So the local aspect of those works are valued at 85 million Jamaican dollars, US dollars, 385 million US dollars, and after protracted negotiations to have the conditions of the loan that were approved some time ago, we are looking to start 3 of 15 packages for the local segment, which will start the improvements from Morant Bay to Port Antonio. So I know there's been skepticism in recent time. I can categorically say that that was approved at Cabinet on Monday, and now it will be for the contractors and the procurement process to go through to name the contractors, and I would expect the work to start in the next few months. Details of that, of course, will come out through the NWA as the process continues. The other one is the Morant Bay Urban Center, which the Prime Minister announced some months ago in Morant Bay at the Goodyear Oval. I'm pleased to announce that a joint venture agreement between the Factories Corporation of Jamaica and China Harbour Engineering Company has been approved by Cabinet, and that will then allow for negotiations to continue for work to start in short order in relation to that project that was outlined. Those 2 projects, I know people have been raising them in recent times in relation to what is the status. Finally, another project, infrastructure project that will be far-reaching in the Portmore and surrounding areas is a Naga Head Industrial Park, which will be specific to a BPO complex on 34 acres of land. That also, a joint venture agreement has been approved with Factories Corporation, and that also now will move to the negotiation for the construction. That will provide thousands of jobs for the people of Portmore and the surrounding communities. So I thought it important to indicate that not only are we trying to catch up and deal with the issues that we are faced with in terms of the MIDP program, but the other negotiated loans that specific to the South Coast Highway improvement, we are now one step further in terms of being able to break ground, and I can categorically state that that will be done in the 2018-19 fiscal year, which ends March next year. So between the end of this year and January, I would expect that road work would start on segments, and that will continue into the 19-20 financial year. So ladies and gentlemen, I thought it important, just like how I'm calling for better communication, to communicate with you at the highest level of government and to indicate that we are aware of your trials and your tribulations. We understand, and we are working assiduously to try and better it. It won't be perfect. What we need to do also is to see if we can shorten the time. So we're also looking at working hours and the possibility of night working so that we can reduce the 8 months to a lesser time based on what we know, and of course with Christmas coming. So please bear with us, and our apologies for any inconvenience. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Minister Vaz, for that update and, of course, concerning the road information here. Sure.
I know the South Coast Highway improvement is a burning issue because it's been on the agenda for so long. So let me just give you the details that I just received. So out of the $85 million, $13 million US will start in the coming months. And that will be the Yallas Bridge to Loudon Hill, St. Thomas, at a cost of almost $5 million US, 6.72 kilometers. Loudon Hill to Pamfret, St. Thomas, approximately $3 million, 4.9 kilometers. And Drapers to Port Antonio, 9.52 kilometers at a value of $5.2 million US. That would be 3 of 15 packages that I mentioned. The rest of them will be announced at later. And let me not forget to remind you that in this $384 million loan, that this will also be dealing with the Williamsfield, Maypen to Williamsfield section of Highway 2000. So it's not just about the South Coast Highway improvement, which is Harborview to Port Antonio. In this, there will be that as well, and I would expect that. I understand that the design work, now that the loan is in the final stages of the terms and conditions being agreed, the timeline for the design of the Harborview to Yallas is 6 months by the engineers and the construction company, and the Maypen to Williamsfield, all of that has been done already. So we'd expect that to start in 2019. So there's more infrastructure projects to come, and it's a matter of improving on the management, the traffic management and the communication to alleviate as much inconvenience as possible.
All right, thank you, Minister Vaz, for that comprehensive update on the infrastructure projects across not just Kingston and St. Andrew, but across the island in particular. And of course, of note, the Nagahead Tech Park that will be done in Portmore, St. Catherine. May I now open the floor to questions from members of the media present. We have 2 microphones, as usual. You raise your hand, we'll acknowledge you, and then when you receive the microphone, we ask you kindly to stand, identify yourself, your media entity, and ask your questions of any of the ministers, and certainly for extra resources, you have myself and Mr. Morgan who are available to you. Any questions this morning? Well, it's good to see Mr. Fitzhenley visiting us this morning.
Morning, Abka Fitzhenley, Nationwide News. Question to Minister Vaz. Part of the narrative prior to your administration coming back to office was there's an urgent need to grow Jamaica's economy by significant numbers. What's your assessment of how those efforts have gone, and based on what you know is in the pipeline, given that you deal with investments, etc., what are your expectations going forward?
Thank you, Apka. I think the PIOG has been giving the projections and the current growth trajectory. We did have an ambitious 5 in 4. We're not giving up on that. Yes, we are improving. We have had consistent growth for every quarter since taking office. There's a lot more that can be done, and there's a lot more that will be done. We are having some challenges, as you know, in terms of issues of getting things out of the pipeline. It is, yes, sometimes frustrating, but we are working assiduously because the appetite for investment in Jamaica is at an all-time high. The projects that are in the system to come out, specifically investment projects that will create major employment and major growth, are coming out slowly. We're trying to improve that. But most importantly, government will be announcing in due course through the Ministry of Finance, the Minister of Finance, some of our own initiatives to spur growth in relation to divestments and other areas. So you'll be hearing that in due course, but I can say that we are on the right path, and hopefully we will get to the 5 in 4 sooner than later.
And Abka, just to add, yesterday, the Doing Business report, if you read, in the details, Jamaica is now ranked 5th in the world in terms of startups. And that is very significant because the investment climate certainly has improved. Any other questions from members of the media? Once again, Mr. Fitzhenley.
No, I think I'm the only reporter here.
Not quite, Abka.
No?
But yeah. There are others.
Chris is here. Okay.
Yes.
To the Education Minister, regarding the PEP program, sir, a call by the JTA President for it to be postponed or phased in, etc. I know the ministry did, or a study was commissioned which showed that there are more schools prepared than he had suggested. Where are we at concerning that? What's happening from the ministry perspective?
Thank you very much, Abka. Subsequent to that call by the JTA president, we have had a full executive meeting with them to outline what our plans and strategies. And one of the suggestions that even came out of that consultation would have been to have actual sensitization session with the teachers themselves to find out from them particularly what are their particular concerns. We started those engagements yesterday. One was held at Woolmer's, and I had an opportunity to engage the teachers themselves so that they can be assured that the ministry is standing with them, because the issue is that some persons are a little bit uncertain of themselves, the lack of confidence, and so we're doing all that we can to allay those fears. The printed material from publishers in terms of the workbook are now being available at the end of this week. Printed material in terms of the curriculum that was raised, all of that were printed and distributed. All of that is already online. We have said we will further bolster that. We'd have an exclusive website for PEP, so it's going to be resources for teachers, for principals, for students, for everybody. And we're going to roll out the red carpet. We are going to make sure that we have our own technical people in the field, identify school by school, teacher by teacher who need additional support. So we are very confident that with a partnership with the JT and the teachers, all will be well at the end where PEP is concerned.
I was asking you, sir, what do you make of the narrative coming from the opposition, from the erstwhile minister regarding this matter of the PEP?
Well, first of all, we need to be reminded that the idea to transition from GSAT to PEP has been long in coming and has straddled several administrations. And in fact, the previous administration had intended to roll out PEP in 2017. When we took over, we had to review what was there, made some tweaks and adjustments, and we are now forecasting for it to be implemented in 2019. So we think that we are far better now in terms of readiness than would have been in 2017.
Are there any other questions from members of the media? Well, Abka, again, yes.
To our colleague, if there's no...
No, there are no other questions from your colleagues.
I wanted
Continue.
to find out from...
Yes, carry on, yes.
Oh, Minister Reid, an update on the whole Calabar issue. What is the latest you have there? I was asked to ask you that.
All right.
Thank you. In relation to the Calabar matter, as you would have heard from my previous announcement, that the ministry felt that the procedures being articulated required some amount of revision to that particular position. Bear in mind, we have a K to 13 strategy where we want all students to remain in our school system up to grade 13, up to age 18, and that we have alternative programs available to facilitate these students. So the current situation is that a meeting was in fact held yesterday, as I had indicated, that we needed some time to convene that meeting. A list of 33 students who were asked to find alternate placements was presented to the education officer. Of that number, 5 parents reported that they had already sought alternate placements. 1 child reportedly has migrated. 8 were previously reinstated, and 8 requested that they be helped to find alternate placements by the ministry, as they wanted a new environment for their children. The other 11 students and parents did not attend the meeting and have not contacted the school. So I've asked the regional director to make sure that we find out where those persons are, because we can get them enrolled in other programs, such as the CAP program. So we don't want any child to be left behind. The guidance counselors were directed equally to make home visits to ascertain information to direct them how to proceed. So that is where we are. We will work with Calabar to make sure that they properly calibrate. What we want is a customized intervention program to look at what are the factors that would have impacted on their performance. And bear in mind that you know, a 60% average is a high standard in of itself, even for sitting Sept. So we have to bear in mind that we are short in terms of high school places. We have to make sure our boys, particularly, or youth, are not disenfranchised. I can't, as a minister, allow any child to fall through the cracks, fall out of the system. So what we want are our school authorities, if they're having challenges with students, engage the ministry so we can work with them to provide a customized solution to whatever challenges those students are having.
All right, thank you, Minister. Shamela, yes.
Good morning, Shamala Pullen from TVJ. Mr. Reid, student athletes performing poorly and being kicked out of school. What's the take on that?
Well, that is unacceptable, because and I don't want the term about kicking out of school, because we are not supporting that, and there has to be due process in that regard. So I believe there's an opportunity where, even through sports, creatively, you can use that to inspire students to do better academically. So that is where I'm saying schools need to work with us to design and customize program to meet the needs of our students, rather than the view that if they're not performing, then we just kick them out of school. That is not supported by the ministry. The code of regulation is very clear, the procedures to be followed in terms of the exclusion of students out of a school.
All right. Are there any other questions, ladies and gentlemen? I'm sorry, Minister Vaz had to leave a little early. My apologies. What's the question, though, Apka? Maybe we'll be able to facilitate. Okay. All right. That's fine. Any other questions, ladies and gentlemen? All right. There being no other questions, may I thank you so much for coming with us today to the post-cabinet briefing. Well, here's Minister Vaz. Would you care then? Yes, there's a question for you, Minister Vaz, just before we close. All right. Yes, he's having a nice one-on-one, yes.
I wanted to ask you, sir, regarding the environment. You speak to the environmentalists regarding Jamaica's performance. They always say there's a lot more to be done. I gather you are to attend soon upon the G7 meeting. What is your honest assessment of how Jamaica has performed, and by extension GOJ, in terms of taking steps to safeguard the environment?
We are absolutely committed to the protection of the environment, and the fact that the Prime Minister has chosen to keep the environment and climate change under his ministry indicates that very clearly. There are some issues, and some pressing and burning issues, literally, and you will hear more as indicated in relation to the impending announcement as it relates to reusable plastic and styrofoam. As I said, I'm going to the G7 on Tuesday, and I intend to speak to it before I leave to go to the G7. In relation to the recent report, air quality report that came out on Riverton, I want to indicate, as I had said a few months ago, that cabinet submission is in the final stages. It has taken a little longer because we are coming up with a solution. And what I can indicate is that I'm very aware of the air quality control issues specific to the Riverton and surrounding areas. And in that submission, and coming out of that submission, will be a remedy to deal with the 1.5 million tires that are currently in and around the Riverton City dump, and new arrangements for the disposal of tires, which will include the shredding of those tires. And those negotiations continue. It will be a PPP, and we are looking forward to working. I'm sure that as soon as that is concluded, it goes to cabinet between the Ministry of Local Government and the Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation, and a definitive announcement will come. So some of them take a little longer because you don't want to put a Band-Aid on it for it never to be dealt with once and for all. What we are looking is for holistic solutions to deal with these issues that have been nagging and burning for decades, not years, decades. And we have to find a fulsome solution. So to answer your question, Abka, there are still many issues, yes, and we are dealing with them in relation to the enterprise team. That also, there's a meeting this week, and the country will be updated on that in relation to waste to energy and when we will be in a position to go out for the RFPs.
I think that Minister Vaz was very comprehensive in his response, Abka, but there's a context that I want to add to what he said. I think objectively, it could be concluded that this current administration has done more in relation to protecting the environment than any other government historically. Remember the issue with the Goat Islands. The Prime Minister made a definitive statement regarding that as we entered office. You remember that we have also designated a significant portion of the area known as the cockpit country as a protected area, and no mining will take place there. You'd also remember that when the designation was made in Parliament, the opposition asked us, why are we giving up such significant amounts of revenue? And I think that symbolized our commitment. The issue with plastics, we're leading on that as well. There are legacy issues as it relates to the Riverton dump and landfills across the island. And one of the first things that we did was re-engage the enterprise team to explore how we can look at issues related to waste to energy and so on to deal with the waste disposal issues that are taking place. Currently, the Mayor of Kingston is in Gibraltar looking at how we can deal with issues related to the waste that goes into the Kingston Harbor and the latest technologies there to capture the plastics and other things that are going into the sea. So, objectively, you could say, and the first part of your question is asking, how is the government doing with the environment? I think the government's actions as it relates to the environment have been progressive and have been fundamental in terms of the change in the government's approach to environmental issues. And that's the only thing I would wish to add to Mr. Vaz's statement.
All right. Thank you so much, Robert, Minister Vaz, Minister Reid. As indicated before, there are no other questions. Am I clear on that? Is there any other questions before we close? All right. There being no other questions, may I thank you. Shamila, you have a late question. All right. Yes. Hold on. You don't need to shout. There's a mic.
Fishermen, thank you. Fishermen in Montego Bay, Freeport, they're widening that area. The impact of the fishes are disappearing. What can you say about that?
I'm not quite sure. You're talking about the recent announcement for the bypass highway for Montego Bay that Minister Sang spoke about? Yeah, what do you... if we are widening it now, or it's going to be widened? To be widened.
To be widened.
Yes.
The impact, the fishermen there are complaining about the fish, right, disappearing. What can you say about the impact?
Disappearing before the highway is built or disappearing now? I'm not understanding quite sure. Is there existing construction?
What I do know is that there's a development plan for the area. The issue of fish stocks in the Caribbean Sea is an issue that has been long-standing. The disappearance of fish stocks is not particularly related to infrastructural development, but also related to the destruction of fish habitats across the island, where we have seen that it also relates to the practices of some of the persons who do depend on the sea. I know that the Ministry of Agriculture has been working with fisher folk. I also know that the government, through its various agencies, has been looking at how to improve the fish stocks. You would be aware that in that particular area near to Freeport, there is a fish sanctuary there, and there are also fish sanctuaries across other sections of the islands, particularly in the area adjacent to Goat Island, which I spoke about before. I don't know if the question that you asked was phrased in a manner that can be answered by the government. Oh, dredging of the Freeport. Yeah, go ahead.
Any dredging or any road infrastructure programs require extensive environmental impact assessments and impact studies. So all of that will be a part, and whoever is getting that permit will have very strict conditionalities in which they have to meet, which will be monitored by the relevant government agencies. So yes, it may have an impact, but there will be remedial works that will have to undertaken by the Port Authority of Jamaica or whoever is doing it in order to restore the place to its original condition. So be assured that that is very stringent, and it's not the first time. We have done Trelawney, we have done Ocherous, we have done several dredging across Jamaica for major projects.
I don't know if there's any study that has concluded that the actions that are taking place is the cause of any depletion of fish stocks. What we do know, as I said earlier, is that we have a problem with the degradation of the habitat of fish within the region. There have been various studies that have been done that have shown that there's been a significant decline of particular species which are very popular on the plates of many of the persons in this room, right? So I think that there needs to be a wider assessment of the concerns of the fisher folks without coming to a conclusion that the reason why they perceive that fish is less is because of development action taking place.
All right, thank you so much. Really appreciate your being here, everyone. Thank you to Ministers Reid and Vaz for presenting this morning, and certainly Mr. Morgan here for attending as well. Thank you, and there is refreshments outside, and we'll see you again at the next post-cabinet briefing. Good morning, everybody.